All right. Tonight we've got Chase S. Joseph with us, coach, writer, speaker, friend of the show. Darren's been chatting with him quite a bit. We're going to be talking about personality types, Jungian archetypes, probably a lot about working on ourselves as well, and sort of a little bit of self-help stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe some machine learning algorithms as well.
Yeah, probably all sorts of fun stuff and personality stuff, and good stuff that should really, there shouldn't be anybody in the audience that isn't, this is everybody.
Yeah.
Or at least it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, Chase.
Thanks for having me on long and short notice simultaneously.
Yeah, no kidding.
That'll happen.
Yeah, well, thanks for sticking around. I mean, geez, we could have rescheduled, but that's all good.
No, I honestly didn't want to, and I had planned on doing it this week. I just for some reason thought we were doing it Sunday instead of tonight, but that was perfectly cool too because I definitely had an opening and I wanted to do it sooner than later, so it wasn't actually a problem by any means.
I'm pretty excited to talk to you because I once we set this up, it's probably been like a month and a half ago or whatever. You've been talking to a couple of friends of mine and helping them out, and it gets me excited because one of the first things that got me into podcasting was listening to some stuff. You might have heard some of the new Man podcast was one of them, and Trip Linear was one of the hosts, I think, of that podcast. But it was really about men's groups and sort of like the new man, right? Not between the macho jerk and the new age wimp kind of thing, right? And it kind of reminds me of some of the stuff that you guys are doing. I mean, I might be way off, but I was kind of excited to talk to you about all this.
Yeah, I'm willing to go to like any level of depth with it. It's really an interesting science, and it permeates absolutely every component of human interaction and human life. And a lot of people just don't know about it. It's mostly because people have viewed this science, which the science is called Jungian analytical psychology. It's like, ooh, it's this voodoo thing that only the super smart people at the psychology universities speaking with giant, huge ass words that they can't, I can't even spell them. Let's be honest. Do you think, is anyone like a layman actually going to be able to derive any good quality for life-changing information out of that? Hell no. They're not even going to bother or waste their time. And I'm sorry, but psychology is in a lot of cases one of the most boring sciences ever. And then on top of that, you have people telling you, oh, it's just a pseudoscience, so why pay attention to it anyway? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So where do you want to start, Darren? This is a pretty big topic, broad topic.
Yeah, it is. I think we should just kind of maybe give a quick breakdown on what exactly, because I mean, I really got drawn into the personality type thing right off the bat. So if we could maybe give a quick rundown of sort of where that comes from and what that sort of means, I guess, in a real quick sort of condensed version, so we can expand on it.
And when you say personality type, is this like Myers-Briggs kind of stuff, or more of a Jungian thing, or is it a hybrid?
Well, I think isn't the Myers-Briggs developed from the Jungian ones?
It is. And in fact, actually, contrary to popular belief, the MBTI or Myers-Briggs type indicator is literally just a test. That's it. It's a test. It's not a part of the science. It's not developing the theory or anything. It's just a test. That's all it is. The test exists to determine or help a person determine one of the 16 personality archetypes or personality types that they have. That's all it is. It's just a freaking test. Too bad it sucks.
Yeah.
I haven't even done that test yet. I just took Chase's word for it. So what am I? I'm an INFP.
Yeah, that's right. INFP, also known as the dreamer. Super moral. Has their own little internal dreamland. They're call it idealistic world that they want to bring into reality, because that's a better place to go to, because reality sucks that much. And sometimes when you're daydreaming your ideal world, it would be nice if you could take some components of your ideal world and bring it into this reality, because reality just sucks, especially to INFPs, because they're like, really, do I have to live in this reality? This sucks. Why can't pigs fly? Why can't cars go back in time? Why can't this truck, as an additional fuel tank, have perfectly ice cold Coca-Cola available to me at all times? I mean, the sky's the limit in the dreamland, basically, in that regard. But that's just one of the 16 archetypes. But your archetype, it's fantastic. It has some of the highest, it's tied for highest moral awareness. You always know about exactly how you feel about everything. And your mind is literally going, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, 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 good, 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 bad, bad, good, but, etc. Yeah, when you're thinking about things like, okay, this is good, or I feel good about that. And then at the same time, you're also aware of what everyone wants. And then that gives you the ability to predict human behavior. You can predict what people are going to do before they do it. It's called extroverted intuition. Your intuition just can see things before it happens. It's a form of prescience. It's a form of seeing into the future, precognition, basically. It's just a limited spectrum. And then your inner child is all about like what you're experiencing, what makes you comfortable, and what you like to taste, what you like to do on your own. It's also where your sense of duty and loyalty and honor and justice comes from. It makes you into this very dutiful person. That's why you and Graham have such a great relationship, because Graham needs somebody around him who is loyal to him, and you are loyal to him, and you guys are best friends in that regard. And now Graham's all about what he wants to do, but you're all about what you should do. And you like to give Graham what he wants, and he likes to give you a good experience, right? So it makes you comfortable. And then Graham also makes you feel good, and you feel good, but you're always asking Graham what his thoughts are. And like, hey man, what do you think about this, etc. Do you think this is a good thing? And then Graham's like, no, I don't think that. No, that's bullshit. Let's not even do that. Or yeah, sure, man. Actually, I was thinking about that the other day, and if you do it this way, and then Graham can go into the mechanics, and you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I feel good about that. Sure, I'll go ahead and do it. And then you're comfortable doing it, and then it happens. Or Graham's about to make a decision himself, and he's like, how do you feel about this? And you're like, dude, no, I wouldn't do that. I mean, if you do that, this bad thing's going to happen, then this bad thing's going to happen, then this bad thing's going to happen. And it's like, what the hell? So then you have that opportunity to warn him, and he's like, okay, yeah, you're right. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that anymore. Sorry, guys. No, thanks. Good point. I'm not going to do that. So that's just kind of how your guys' interaction goes. Graham being a more mentor-like person, always got to show you something, and you're like, yeah, you like to be shown things, but you also give Graham the freedom that he needs to do what he wants, right? And he lives in the moment that way, right? So, and it's good for you, because people who live in the moment, they're more mechanically aware. They're aware of the physics, they're aware of like how things just innately work, but from your point of view, you're more of the metaphysics, because Graham's like, well, what is? I mean, this is a water bottle, what is, it has dimensions, it has height, weight. It is a Flaska.
I just got mine in the mail last night.
Did you?
It is. Yep. It is dope. I blame John Brisson.
Me too. I ordered it on John's thing, and
I'm brushing my teeth with fucking powder. It fucking takes a half an hour now. I thought 2 minutes was tough.
You're pulling with coconut oil. So
God
Darren,
bless
does that
John Brisson?
Yeah, does that feel like you are you going around going good, bad, good? Like, does that feel like you, all this like
sometimes
this extroverted intuition and all that?
The dreamer stuff definitely does.
Yeah,
and then a lot of there's some negative aspects to it too, and a lot of those seem to line up with me a little better too as well. Yeah, definitely. When I started listening to his rundown, because Chase did a video and a podcast on the type, so that kind of gives you 40 minutes of it all, and that definitely resonated with me, a lot of it.
Yeah. So that's
it's not just that. Chase also got me into some books and some stuff that has really started to make a major impact on my life.
Yeah.
And I'm only like 25% through the book. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I love how you guys sort of trying to figure out our dynamic and all that, and how. So, did you guys think about how?
I don't care about our dynamic.
Are we different types that work well together then, or because some people say that we have a really interesting dynamic, but I mean, I only met Darren a year before the podcast. Like a year before the podcast, probably. Tops. Like we became fairly good friends, and we do have something special on the show, I think, but I don't know why that is, or I didn't really ever think about the types of people we are, and how we interact.
But I mean, that is definitely something we hear all the time, is we've got this weird chemistry, and none of that was planned. Like,
no.
If we could write that, then we'd be writing stuff.
Well, you guys actually have highest compatibility in the same way that John and Titus at fixyourgut.com have highest compatibility. You guys have highest compatibility too, because Graham is like the mentor, and then you're the dreamer. What this means is that, so here, let me give you like a basic rundown of how that actually mechanically works. So, so imagine a skeleton, right? And then you take out of the skeleton and you just have the skull and the spine, basically. Okay. And that has the mind and the nervous system with it. That's basically a sperm, right? And that is the sperm. And then like the nervous system coming out from the sperm basically is the male contribution, the masculine contribution to the egg, right? And then the egg is basically the rest of the body. And so the skull and skeletal structure with the nervous system is actually a radio. It's a radio where the mind is able to tune into 8 different spectrum at any given time. And 4 of those spectrum are for decision making, and the other 4 of those spectrums for perceptions or gathering information, right? We call those, Jung called them cognitive senses, but nowadays, like colloquially or contemporarily, we call it cognitive functions. So functionally speaking, with the cognitive functions, everyone's mind has these 8 different spectrum that they tune into, and everyone is able to tune into the same 8 spectrums. The difference is that some of them are able to tune into other spectrums better than others, right? But it's all balanced. So, for example, we'll just use this as an example. Darren's head has 100 frames a second of morality hitting his head, whereas you, Graham, you have 100 frames a second of ethics hitting your head, basically. So you're aware of the collective value judgment. You walk into a room, Graham, and you're like, you just know how everyone's feeling. You just know, and you always spot that one guy who's just not feeling that good, and you feel compelled to go talk to that guy, and she'd be like, bro, what's up? You know, and the guy tells you a story, and you're like, well, but if you did it this way, wouldn't it be better? And he's like, oh yeah, man, that's a really good idea. I didn't even think of that. Good point. And then all of a sudden he's happy with the rest of the event, and it was as if nothing happened, you know. That's just one example, you know, of what people could be aware of, you know. So the eight cognitive functions are the spectrum they go in. So how does that work with your guys' minds? So for example, Darren is aware of how he feels, but Graham is aware of how Darren feels. Okay, cool, that works. And then Graham is aware of what he wants, and Darren is aware of what Graham wants. Graham is aware of what Darren is doing or the experience he's having. Graham is always aware of when Darren is comfortable or uncomfortable. That's why Graham seeks to make Darren more comfortable, right? Graham is always aware of what he thinks. But guess what? Darren is also aware of what Graham thinks at all times, right? And this is just an example. Those are your egos. The top 4 functions represent your ego, and your egos are just perfectly intertwined because one is aware of how he feels, the other is aware of how he feels. One is aware of how he thinks, and then the other is aware of how he thinks. Because, and then it's just shared together, and it allows you to have the absolute best possible relationship because you guys can read each other like open books completely, and you cover each other's bases. You know, Darren's more safety oriented, you know, and can provide warnings and to the gotchas that is coming in Graham's direction, and Graham is more free and able to handle, you know, physics and mechanics a lot more, and can provide advice to Darren to fix those mechanical issues, like maybe if a car broke down, for example, or switching out something with a light and whatnot. Or anything that had to use tools, etc. those options are there, and it can happen. Oh, here's another good point. Graham is one of the most forgetful people in the world, and Darren remembers everything.
You might have this opposite there. I don't know.
Yeah, really?
On that one, yeah.
And the mechanical thing as well. Darren's probably more mechanical than I am, so there might be some opposites there, I think.
That could be learned behavior.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Instead of like inherent skill.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah, it could be. That's an interesting thing to think about, actually, Brody. But we can't hear you, so it's. Brody had just said that he thinks there's a difference between learned behavior and inherent skill. So like I could have learned my skill for building, and because I've been doing it for 20 years, whereas if Graham would have got into it, he might have had a natural aptitude for it.
That's Brody's 100% correct. So what we call that is the difference between human nature and human nurture. So nature is these archetypes. It's natural mental capability. Graham literally could be that guy on a whim who could buy a broken up motorcycle and then for the first time ever just have it in a shop and get a manual out and literally figure it out and put it back together, especially later in life. Not so much earlier in life, because it takes a mentor like Graham to mature and develop those mechanical abilities later in life, especially because he's trying to aspire in that realm to become even more mechanically capable as he gets older. But that's just, I'm speaking about natural aptitude in that regard. Now, from a nurture standpoint, if you're thrust in a situation where you have to learn, building when you don't have that natural aptitude, a good part about Darren's psyche is that he can remember those things, and then on a a case by case basis, on a per task basis, he'll have like a particular tool he picks up, and he'll remember all of the tasks that he's ever done with that particular tool. And then when he's doing a new task he hasn't done before, he'll use pieces of data of old memories of when he used this particular tool to try to figure out how to deal with that. And that's how he adapts. Whereas Graham picks up the tool, he may not have used it before with the task, but he just naturally knows how the physics works. And he'll just figure it out on its own, because it's like, up and down and physics and normal thing. But from Darren's point of view, it could be different this time, right? It could be different in that regard. And if he doesn't have experience with it in the past, then he's able to actually gather that information from past experiences and use it. Whereas like I said, with Graham, it doesn't have to rely on past experience. It is, because Graham's aware of what is, whereas Darren is aware of what if. That's basically the big difference right there.
Huh. Interesting. I find that Darren's a little more like this short-term. He's got a really good long-term memory from stuff, but his short-term memory and there's an absent-mindedness to you.
You son of a bitch.
Awesome. I was about to go into that.
I'm pretty absent-minded sometimes.
But
my wife would agree.
But your long-term memory,
like,
you can ask him something that happened like a year ago, and he'll remember a conversation of exactly what
you can ask him something from 20 years ago. He could recite parts of his childhood. It's because
I have a big problem with. I have a big problem with like just today. Like I have a huge problem with just like
where your keys are.
Where my keys are. Like just today, like Lisa came over. She just cleaned the counters and everything in the kitchen. And I just like set a bunch of trash there, and I'm just fucking forget. When I set it down, seriously, in my head, I'm like, I'm just setting this here for a second, and I'm gonna come right back, and I'm gonna deal with it. But then, like, poof, I'm gone.
Yeah,
all the time. Keys, wallet, passport, anything that's important.
Don't lose that.
That's what it really seems like. And then, like, honestly, the day before I left to the States, I lost my wallet fucking 8 times.
Wow.
Because I had a bunch of money in it. I had switched all my money because I like cashed when I go down there. So I had like $1,000 cash in it for the gas and hotels and everything all the way down. So it's like for 2 days before, like not just the day before, 2 days. The day before I left and the day I left, I must have lost that wallet 8 times. And I'm fucking scrambling, looking all over the place for it.
Because I never lose my wallet. Never. Well,
I always find it.
Yeah, I know, but like it's just always, I know where it is all the time.
And it's like when I should be hyper aware of where the fucking thing is. Should be in my fucking pocket, probably.
So what you guys are noticing is the difference between extroverted sensing and introverted sensing. So introverted sensing is what Darren has, And that gives a person super long-term memory access. They have this gigantic hard drive, and everything is written to hard drive. But if you're an introverted sensor, you lack random access memory, or RAM, in a computer, right? And RAM is short-term memory, which Graham has short-term memory in spades. And he's also able to know where physical objects are. Of course, if someone was to move those physical objects of his and putting them in a place that they were not before, that would really piss Graham off. And not cool to go in that direction.
He does get mad when he comes in here and I've moved his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. I come in and like, what the fuck is going on in here?
He gets
The studio's a mess. I'm like, oh.
So yes, you're right. Long-term memory, but you have amazing short-term memory. The problem with the short-term, like the problem with the long-term memory, is that you lack short-term memory. And like, so if Darren was to misplace his wallet, he won't even. It's not in the short-term memory because it's short-term. It's like,
that's exactly
where
what it
the
feels
hell
like.
is it? But then 2 days later, you'd be like, oh, that's where it is, and then there it is, you know. And then he finds it, and it's not a problem anymore because time has gone by for his mind to take that data out of the short-term memory, the small amount of short-term memory that he does have, which is about 10 frames a second, and stick it into his 50 frames a second of long-term memory access for his awareness. And then he's able to remember where that wallet was. It's like, oh, thank God. And, you know, it just takes a couple of days, and then boom, there it is. But after a while, you know,
I can literally picture times where that's happened.
Yeah, and
I'm like, oh, fuck.
And the weird thing is, I know, like, I remember, like, usually when let's say I got to bring something to work the next day, or I got to do all these little tasks, I'll remember those pretty much. And if I don't, it pisses me off because I feel like I've been unaware or distracted or something like that. But when it comes to remembering a long-term, like something that happened, let's say 6 months ago, a conversation, I remember the feeling of it, or I remember like a sense of the conversation. But for me to quote exactly, if I was asked like, what did he say to you? I would probably say like, I'm comfortable enough to say, I don't know. Like, I can't remember exactly what was said, but I remember the feeling of it. I remember the gist of it, but I can't.
What about numbers?
Yeah, numbers are
like, I still remember, numbers. Like, I swear I remember every phone number I've ever known in my life.
Yeah, numbers are okay for me too. But it's just that I'm not comfortable quoting something because I also want to be authentic and genuine. I don't want to make up something, right? And a lot of times I have to say, like, I don't know. I don't know what happened then. And that kind of bothers me in some ways because I should remember those details.
Yeah, and that is an example of how that works. Extroverted sensing, because it's short-term memory, when you have all this data that your mind is trying to keep track of and keep it in short-term memory, so you have quick access to it. Well, the problem is new data is coming in every day and pushing old data out. And then your mind is just naturally aware of data that just doesn't necessarily need to keep, and it just throws it out. And it's like, okay, well, if this is important, it'll come up again, no problem.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
Another way of looking at it is totems. So, for example, an extroverted sensor, when they're around physical objects, they have their memories attached, their long-term memories attached to the physical objects themselves. This is what I call toteming, or totems. And it could be any physical object. It could be a phone, for example, or whatever. But when you pick up an object, you basically remember the last time you've used it. You're reminded of all that time where it goes there. This is why people, like, you know, women have rings on their fingers for like when they get married, et cetera, especially if they're extroverted sensing. They take it very, very seriously, more so than the introverted sensors, because it reminds them as a symbol, and it brings them back to getting married and brings them back to all those feelings, et cetera, because of what that symbol represents, that little token.
Is that me or Graham?
This is Graham. This is more Graham approach. Whereas an SI user like Darren, yeah, that could be important from like how you feel, but you, regardless if your ring is on your finger or not, you remember your wedding, you remember the entire thing. You could probably even say exactly what the preacher dude was saying or how the vows handled. Girl, fair enough. But you could definitely remember almost every single detail. Whereas Graham has the ability to have his memory stored in physical objects. This is also why it may be necessary for him to take notes and have sticky notes everywhere, potentially, or have a notebook on him, or to be taking notes on his phone, because storing his memories in the physical environment is necessary for him to remember important things in case something gets into long-term memory access, because he needs to be able to keep it in short-term memory. Whereas you don't have to keep sticky notes. You're just going to remember. when it gets to long term. If it's still in the short term, okay, yeah, it might be a good idea to have a sticky note here and there, but you don't really need them very much, because once it gets to long-term memory access, it's like, okay, great, I remember.
Unless
but of
it's
course,
a Bitcoin password, because those things are fucking retarded.
I know, right? Yeah. Or, I mean, another way to look at this is the elderly. Elderly people suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia, right? The ones that suffer dementia are actually almost always introverted sensing users. The ones that suffer from Alzheimer's are extroverted sensors.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
but that totally makes sense. I mean, my notes folder on my phone is jammed. I mean, I take the show notes. When we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, I'm the one taking the notes, and D&D, like, it's that's right on the.
You're always taking notes. Every time I walk into your office, you got to pull out your little planner and start writing stuff down.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, man.
I take no notes on anything unless it's something super critical.
And I pay
Sometimes I feel bad
because
I'll walk into a meeting, it's like everyone's got a book, and I'm just like,
yeah. Extroverted sensing, introverted sensing even goes even further. It also determines your sexual response too.
Oh boy.
And
here we go.
No, it's true. It's really true. Like, for example, an extroverted sensor is someone who wants to give sensation to other people. They're all about giving sensation. An introverted sensor is all about receiving sensation.
So who's who?
So Graham is an extroverted sensor. So he likes to give sensation in the bedroom, and kind of drive the bus, as it were.
He's a bus driver.
He's the bus driver.
Oh man, that came out wrong. Yeah, that's gonna be a soundbite.
And then
he's not the bus driver over here, okay? He's driving a different bus.
And you're the one that needs to feel it. Yeah, that makes sense too.
Easy, bud. Yeah. You're not helping.
Yeah, and predominantly people are this way with their sensing functions, and it goes even deeper, like when you get to the intuitive functions, because Graham's like, well, I want to do this, like, although Graham, to be fair, is very responsible with what he wants, he's just not going to let himself want things. But when he wants things, he's spent a lot of time thinking about it. He's very much more responsible. But this also causes Graham to be very critical of other people with what they want, because he's like, well, I'm really responsible with what I want and what I desire and what I allow myself to buy or do or make decisions on based on what I want. But I see everyone else out there is super irresponsible. And it's like, why do these people want to do this? They're stupid. Like, come on. Like, hello? Why are you wanting this? And then it's just, it causes Graham to be critical in this way. And that it can even go deeper than that too. Graham can end up being like looking at others, and he's at risk of jumping to conclusions sometimes about their intentions, because you could mistake their intentions and then make decisions based on mistaking their intentions, which can backfire on him socially if he's not careful. But luckily, he verifies with people and is able to, like, okay, hold on, I need to verify that's true first before I jump to a conclusion. Yeah. And as Graham gets older, he's able to do that. And the older you are, the more mature you are in most cases, and then you're able to become more integrated with your persona and in the 4 personalities inside yourself. And then because of that, you're able to behave more maturely. But like very, very young mentors, they don't do that. They can jump to conclusions about people's intentions to the point where they're assuming that people are betraying them, assuming that this person's cheating on them, or when it's not remotely true.
Yeah, I really try not to do that judgment. I feel myself going there, and I really try and be aware of, like, who knows what the fuck is going on? It might not have anything to do with you. Like, really try and tamper that.
It's always got something to do with you, man.
Never does. It never does. But I mean, I think that's part of recovery work too. Like when I went through recovery and tried to get clean and sober, that was part of that. Like not taking other people's inventory and not like, assuming shit about other people, right? Just looking at your own stuff and stop resenting things and all that kind of stuff about building up resentments and judgments.
Yeah, it's definitely important. My father has the same psyche you do, basically. So he's a mentor as well. And I had this one situation a while back. there's this kid that he knew in church, and he got addicted to drugs and destroyed his family, and it was horrible. And 20 years later, the kid was completely cleaned up. Everything was great. And he's like, I really want to talk to your dad. I really want to talk to your dad. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll talk to my dad about it. And then I talked to my dad about it. And like, hey, Dad, that guy, if you remember a long time ago, well, he's back and he wants to talk to you. He's like, I don't want to talk to that guy. Like, what do you mean? The point is I'm trying to make is that mentors have a hard time with letting people change. And because when the mentor thinks of a person, they remember exactly right back to how that person was, decades ago, and how that was a horrible experience, and how they're hurting other people, making people feel bad, being unethical, being super selfish and depraved, and how they just don't want to have anything to do that. And being near that person just brings them back to that. And there's like this little emotional trauma that comes with it. And they just want to have anything to do that. So they have to cut themselves off completely. Which because mentors are aware that, sages do this worse. They're the INFJ, but the ENFJ has a little bit. But mentors are aware that if they're around bad people, they'll start to mirror those people. So the mentor has to make sure that those that they are around are good people, because they do not want to put themselves at risk of being corrupted by bad people around them.
That's
right?
Interesting. So are you saying that? So I'm this mentor type, and what is that? The ENFP? Is that what it is?
The ENFJ.
ENFJ. Okay.
Yeah.
The J for jackass.
And then what are you? You're the INFP, Darren. What are you?
The dreamer.
The dreamer. The dreamer.
Dream both.
He's the dreamer that doesn't dream. Like dream while he sleeps. Like,
I've been dreaming a little.
He's a daydreamer. We'll call him that.
Yeah, Joseph of many colors. Just get him a coat of many colors. That's all you need to do. We promise not to sell you in slavery. We promise.
Really?
That's awesome. So what else? Can you talk about some more of your stuff that you've been?
My stuff?
Yeah.
I've just been reading books.
And they've been good for you?
Yeah, they've been pretty influential. I mean, I took it and ran with it with some other people I know, and kind of, I've been spreading, especially the one book. I've given that book to probably like 8 different people now. The No More Mr. Nice Guy book.
Oh yeah, that's life changing.
Oh,
absolutely
dude.
Life changing.
I mean, I'm not going to get into any of the details here, but that book set in motion some pretty profound shit that happened over the last 4 weeks for sure.
Yeah,
stuff that I didn't see happening. And so,
wow.
we can talk about some of the details of that privately, but stuff that I didn't see happening in my lifetime, let alone kind of all sort of happening at once. And it was a pretty crazy month. And then I drove fucking 3,000 miles and listened to music and had some time to fucking reflect on it all.
Yeah. I that book changed my life and really helped complete the process of reaching manhood and helped me guarantee my path towards self-actualization. I basically have a rule, like if you're male, you read this book. And I also tell women too, oh, by the way, you should probably read this book, because it gives the women tools with which to hold their men accountable. And it can be actually really healthy for the women. But also I've noticed that women that read this book actually end up developing humility that causes them to become more respectful, right?
Yeah.
Because a woman being respectful is super important for a relationship. Why is that? Well, it's because it's never good enough for a woman to say, I love you to a man. Like, never. It's not good enough. Why is that? Well, it's because women have this problem where they can love just about any jackass on the street, right? So because of that problem, men like to be preferred. They like to be regarded. They like to be honored,
supported,
loved, and supported. And that is the definition of respect.
Hammering that one home, man.
Love is inclusive in the definition of respect. That's why love is not good enough. So it's more powerful for a woman to say to a man, I respect you, right? So you give me like a Victoria's Secret model, she's naked on my bed, 9 out of 10 beauty, whatever, but she's arrogant. I'm going to throw her out, like straight up, get out of my house. And, not even give her time to dress, just throw her out, because that she is disrespectful. A beautiful woman, sure, is a woman who has physical beauty, sure, and she's pretty and all, and that's fantastic. But a beautiful woman is the one who's got that plus the respectfulness. Respectfulness goes a long way. Respectfulness in reality is actually what endears men. It's what really brings men to women, is that respectfulness. And that's why you see, these men who are like super highly esteemed, they got the nobility going, they got their manhood going, they got it, all that. But you see them with this woman, it's like, why are you with that woman? It's because she's probably the most respectful woman he's ever met. That's why they're together. And she is giving him what he needs, because men are seeking that respectful woman, and if there's ladies listening to this, if you're having a hard time in your relationships with men, either the men are man children. Of course, then again, why are you with man children? Because shouldn't you have personal standards and personal boundaries to keep you away from those man children? But if they're not man children, you're still having problems with them, maybe it's because you're disrespectful, and I would challenge you to find out. And if you need to figure out how to be not disrespectful anymore, the only way to do that is to humble yourself. I mean, it takes a lot of humility for a woman to go to the gym, right? Women have this problem where they're constantly judging each other all the time, especially at the gym. Like, because men look at life as this big pie and we're just trying to get our slice. But women look at life as this big pie. Well, why do you get that slice? You know what I mean? It's this competition they always have with each other, and they're about to tear each other apart. And it's especially difficult at the gym because you got all the skinny bitches everywhere, right? And then you got all the, and they're all judging all the fat chicks coming in, trying to better themselves and whatnot. But it takes a lot of humility for a woman to humble herself and go to the gym, because she recognizes that she's not all that in a bag of chips. And it definitely sets her on the road to respectability. I'm just using the gym as one particular example.
Yeah. So what can guys do to gain the respect of women, though? Because, I mean, a lot of women are going to put that on their guys and say, well, he doesn't deserve my respect, or he's acting this way, or he's doing this and that. So...
Awesome. Yes. So there is a path.
Well, man children is huge. It's a problem in society right now. Like, if you had to put a percentage on man children, what would you put it at?
Oh, shoot. 8 out of 10.
Jesus
at
Christ.
Holy.
I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. 7 to 8 out of 10.
I don't really hear that term very much. Can you explain a man child?
So, yeah. A man child is a man who consumes more than he produces. A man child is a man who does not, who is of age. Okay, so he's of legal age, 18 years old, right? Who does not have a job, does not have his transportation, does not have his own place. Okay, that automatically qualifies you for man child instantly. On top of being unhealthy, on top of not having proper financial management. On top of not having their priorities straight, living by the FIS, which is faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. Faith being faith in oneself, not necessarily a belief system.
Right.
Family, taking care of the family, which, if a man has babies with a woman, even in an illicit relationship, but is not taking responsibility to be a father, okay, yeah, he's a man child, for example. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, but fatherlessness is the biggest disease that, other than ignorance, that plagues first world culture. And this is why I do this, is specifically to put a stop to fatherlessness. I am so tired of little boys not knowing their fathers. I'm so tired of it. And it's really what is destroying our culture. It is destroying everything. So I have to work backwards. Okay, how do I solve that problem? Well, working backwards. The answer to the problem is to create mature masculine men of the mature masculine. So to answer your question, how does a man become respectable? Because, a woman's got to be respectful, and that's fantastic. But the man also needs to deserve that respect too. He has to be respectable. So what is the man's respectability? Where does that come from? Well, it comes from nobility. And what is nobility? Nobility is defined by the 4 roles of the mature masculine, which is king, warrior, magician, lover. And this is also from Jungian psychology, these 4 archetypes. So king, a man becomes king when he has his own kingdom. Well, how do you get your own kingdom? Well, obviously you got to have your own castle, a home, your own home by yourself. You have to have your chariot. You got, your car. You have to have a job because you have to produce. Kings are generative. That's the whole point behind being a king. You are generative. You are producing more than you consume. This means you can take on subjects like a queen and children, and potentially being a patriarch of her family because all the men in her family are screwed up, right? How many times has that happened when mature masculine men are taking over the man patriarch role of their women's families because her brothers don't have any of that figured out, or much less her father, and if her grandfather is still alive, you know what I mean? It's just not even there, right? So king is first and foremost. Once you establish king, you started your path towards manhood. This is why I tell young boys who are high school age, don't go to college. Don't even do that. Focus on getting a job. And this has become a meme actually amongst my audience. But get a forklift license. It costs only $200 and like 4 days of class and a test that they won't let you leave until you pass it. Okay, then you're instantly hireable, and you're making, at least most places in the States, $15 an hour for the first year, and then after a year you can get hired on at Amazon and get $22 an hour plus benefits as a 19-year-old. Okay, and then you can get Western Governors University for $600 a month and get your college education that way, instead of ending up with a heaping pile of debt and screwing over everyone's lives after that, right? So then, that seems like a wiser decision to me. But no, we need to send people to Berkeley and get charged $150,000 a year. Awesome, But king, you have to produce more than you consume, because then you are generative, because that's what kings do, and then you can take on subjects. Warrior is what you need to protect your kingdom. So financial management, right? And also health. You have to be eating clean. Organic, non-GMO is the standard that I preach to people. And then I also tell them, maybe you should go to the gym. And if you don't know how to manage your food in the gym, go to eat2perform.com. Hire Eat2Perform. It's awesome. It's like $20 a month. And you got some coach telling you exactly how much food you should be eating every day. So you don't have to think about it. Then you just program it in MyFitnessPal and just do it over and over and over while doing, choose whichever lifting program you want. Eat2Perform will tell you what lifting program to do at the gym. Fine, you can do that. Or you can go and do your own. You can get, my favorite is Tom Finuto's Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle, the TNB28 lifting schedule. That's my preference, but to each their own. The point is that the man is focused on staying healthy, because if you don't have your health, you got nothing. Because if you don't have your health, you can't be a king anyway, because you're not generative, because you're too busy sucking off the government hit at that point, because you need the benefits to keep your health up, because your health has gone to shit. Like, come on. Magician, the third archetype of men's respectability, is all about teaching other men to become kings and warriors. That's really all it is raising up other men into the mature masculine, raising up other men into maturity and becoming real men and shedding their man-child. The boy has to die so the man can be alive. And that is the magician. That was the role of the shaman in ancient times with very tribal communities. That was the shaman's job, very transcendentalist. But the whole point is to initiate young boys into manhood so they can be generative for their tribe, for their society. That's the whole point behind magician. And then magician ends up collecting the ultimate resource, which is wisdom. Wisdom is the most important, most precious substance in all of existence, because if you have wisdom, you can have anything. You can have anything you want if you have wisdom. But wisdom comes from suffering, right? And all of that suffering that you had to do to get to king and warrior has built up wisdom within you. And that's why you're able to use it as the magician, confer it upon your fellow men, raise them up into the mature masculine. And then once you have those three archetypes, you become the lover. And it's not just your relationship with a woman, it's enjoying life in general, like imagining what it's like to be an ant because you're appreciating ants, or going to a Froyo bar, or watching Deadpool 2 in the movie theater by yourself because you're taking yourself out on a date and caring about what you want for once. Lover, that's what lover is all about. If a man is doing these four archetypes of the mature masculine, he is noble, he has nobility, and he is respectable. And if a woman doesn't respect him after all of that, throw her in the dumpster and move on and find someone who will. That's as easy as I could say it at that point. But to be honest, women are not dumb. They'll be like, oh yeah, I am so attracted to that respectable man right now. He's going places, and they're going to hop on that hayride and never let go. So that's kind of how it works from that regard. But how does a man reach those 4 archetypes? It's just one simple thing. And it comes from John Milton's Paradise Lost. There's a scene in there where they're in the Garden of Eden, and it's before the fall of man. And God sends an angel down to go warn Adam that the devil is coming. And the angel shows up at Adam and Eve's place, and they sit down, at a table or whatever, and they're having a conversation. Adam's asking the angel, well, how the moon work? How does the sun work? Scientific questions. And Eve just gets bored out of her head. She's so bored. So then she just leaves. Yeah, I'm going to go be in the garden because I'm bored out of my mind. And as soon as she leaves and shuts the door, Adam turns, looks at the angel. He's like, bro, isn't she smoking hot? I am so tapping that ass. And let me tell you, the angel's like repulsed. He's like, dude, really? Wow. You do realize the cows do it. Is it that important to you? You do realize that if you keep carrying on like that, Mr. Adam, that your wife, Eve, will never respect you? And then Adam freaks out and he's like, oh, Mr. Angel, please help me out. How do I solve that problem? And the angel looks at Adam straight square in the face and eye contact and says, hey, well, all you have to do, Adam, is esteem yourself and never cease. If a man focuses on esteeming himself, he will naturally reach king, warrior, magician, lover all on his own, as long as he is esteeming himself and never stops esteeming. Why is it when people graduate from college, they stop growing? It's all about personal growth. It's about constant, forever personal growth. Yeah. It's all about esteeming yourself.
So is that what esteeming means then? Is it what do you mean by esteeming? Like building self-esteem in a way, or
or building self-value, self-worth, achievement, accomplishment,
authenticity,
reaching new heights and levels, challenging yourself. One way that I've esteemed myself is learn a foreign language. Another way that I've esteemed myself is try to hike Yosemite, the most difficult hikes you could possibly do at Yosemite. Additional ways of esteeming myself, I have a certification test tomorrow, for example, that I've been studying for a while. I'm just constantly focused on self-improvement and building myself up, which naturally builds up my nobility, which naturally builds up my respectability, which makes me attractive to women. That is the answer to the question, what attracts women to men? The answer is nobility, which is the respectability, the level of respectability a man has. That is what they find attractive. It's not about muscles, or confidence. It's not about that, because women, women want their men to be beautiful, but not as much as they want their men to be noble. And sure, men like their women to be noble, but not as much as they like them to be beautiful. It's primary versus secondary. It's a yin and yang. That makes up the attraction. Do
a lot of relationships fall apart because the woman's fooled by the man at first, and then later on realizes that he's just a man child, and she loses respect for him? Like, is that one of the main things that kind of happens? It seems like.
Well, that can happen, but a lot of the times, actually, what I've seen and a lot of people that I've coached, it actually comes down to when a man was noble, but he stopped esteeming himself. And then he started losing that respectability. She started losing respect for him. And then because of that, the relationship fell apart, because as soon as there's a lack of respect, he becomes unloving. And then the relationship just falls apart, all because he stopped esteeming himself. Or look at it this way. The woman gets in a relationship with the guy. She really loves him. It's fantastic. She's respectful. He's respectable. And then all of a sudden she desires him to worship her. And then she says, you need to worship me. And then he buys into that and he starts worshiping her, and she's loving it. She's loving it. She's loving it. And then all of a sudden she starts losing respect for him, because it's like, wow, he's worshiping me now. Is he going to keep carrying on like this? Why am I wasting my time with someone like this? If like I'm all he cares about, if I'm all that there is on his mind, and then she starts losing respect for him, and then he becomes unloving due to that lack of respect, and the relationship falls apart. And she completely self-sabotaged that by expecting him to worship her, and then he bought into it, which sounds like Adam and Eve, technically. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
So does that kind of summarize that No More Mr. Nice Guy book then? Is that sort of one of the core things, or is that separate?
The core things about No More Mr. Nice Guy is how to get to a point where you can actually start esteeming yourself.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah.
so
It's a ton
what
of
I just told you-
self-reflection.
Yeah, the path of self-reflection. And King Warrior Magician Lover represents my personal philosophy from a Jungian psychology point of view on how to define and obtain manhood or the mature masculine. But to even start the road, that's what No More Mr. Nice Guy represents. So, and it really is broken down to in the 4 pillars of self-intimacy, which are taking responsibility for meeting your own needs, having personal standards, having personal boundaries, and having personal goals. These 4 pillars are based on what a person needs to have built within their souls in order for them to actually know themselves or find themselves. Everyone's like, oh, I need to find myself. This is how you do it, right? Like when we're raising children, never ask your children what they're going to be when they grow up. Like never ask them that. No. The question you need to ask them is, what are you going to do to meet your needs when you come of age? That's the question. Because if you get your children thinking about meeting their own needs and recognizing that they have needs, then they'll start having this thing called self-respect. Because in order for them to be in a romantic relationship with somebody, you have to love. Well, the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, is actually implying that you need to be selfish, believe it or not. Because how can you love somebody if you're not loving yourself first? But so if you don't know how to love yourself because you don't have the 4 pillars of self-intimacy, then that means you're not capable of being in a romantic relationship, and you're likely a man-child at that point or immature, right? So how do you solve that problem? You develop the 4 pillars. You get the children focused on needs. You have needs. I am meeting your needs right now. I am, as of that date, I am no longer meeting your needs, and it's on you, etc. And that may sound a little harsh. I'm just using that as an example, but the child has to be primed for meeting their own needs. And then you help them identify their needs and you bring them out in that way. And then you help them develop personal standards. And these personal standards are like self-rules that they have for themselves to keep them on track with meeting their needs and not get addicted to World of Warcraft for 10 years like me and waste my life and destroy my marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having personal standards, right? And then have personal boundaries. Personal boundaries are exactly the same as personal standards, except that's what the person has for other people. You hold others to personal boundaries. And the book No More Mr. Nice Guy talks about how men are seeking the approval of women so much from other people that they don't enforce their personal boundaries at all, right? But if there's a boundary, it has to be enforced every single time externally, even to family members, even to your own father, even to your own mother, even brothers and sisters, whatever, your wife. There's boundaries. And if that boundary is crossed, it's heavy business, potentially relationship ending or relationship pausing for a long ass time because the boundary was violated, right?
Yeah,
And
that's a tough spot because acceptance is a powerful tool as well. And then I feel like if you set too many boundaries, or if I set too many boundaries, then I'd be like not accepting people for who they are or whatever. Like how do you balance that between judgment and non-acceptance and just setting proper boundaries for yourself? Do you know what I mean?
oh yeah, definitely. Obviously, I would recommend anyone be understanding, but quite honestly, it's to each their own. Everyone has a right to their own personal sovereignty. I mean, how dare the state be more sovereign than a man?
Mm-hmm.
Personal sovereignty is really up to the individual. And the 4 pillars of self-intimacy really represent that. Uh, it may seem unreasonable. Like, for example, like I have some crazy personal boundaries that I have set with other people in my life. Like, for example, I've told, like my current relationship, considering to get married and whatnot. And, okay, great. Well, we can do that, but I have these boundaries around that. And I have these goals that have to be met first, instead of like the whole, well, why can't you love me now? we could get married now. And it's like, no, I'm being wise and responsible. And I have a personal boundary for myself that this financial requirement, this health requirement, these requirements have to be met before I consider putting a ring on anyone's finger.
Yeah.
And that's not just a boundary that I set for you. It's also a standard that I hold to myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it comes from. It's not about me becoming this overly judgmental person to push people away. If you really think about it, boundaries can be really endearing, because what it does is that if people are respecting my boundaries, I am respecting their boundaries,
Yeah.
and it creates a culture of mutual respect,
Yeah.
a culture of honor, right? Which changes society and families and even one-on-one, face-to-face relationships and shoulder-to-shoulder relationships too.
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense. Yeah, that's really that's a really good answer. So a book that changed my life like 10 years ago was The Way of the Superior Man.
I read that just like
Oh yeah,
3
it's a
weeks ago.
fantastic
And I
book.
mean and it, because it was also good for women to read, even though you wouldn't think so, but I mean it really gave women a different perspective of men as well. I mean, and I think that's similar to what you're saying about women reading
That one I would say is worth, like, both those books are worth to read them and highlight them and hand them off would probably be a powerful tool. But
Yeah,
that would be a real big, like, you'd want to trust whoever you're giving that book to. You want to just give it to, make sure you trust whoever you give that book to. That's for sure.
Yeah,
What
well,
do you
even
mean
the
by
Well,
magician.
I don't know, just to highlight a book up like that, you're highlighting parts that are kind of part of your, your inner workings. Make sure you're not just giving it to whoever,
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say both those books are worth doing it. The interesting thing about The Way of the Superior Man is that it does I find there's a lot of language in there that kind of gives you the ability to kind of, in a lot of ways, help you navigate the psyche a little more. Yeah, it's interesting for sure. And I mean, not in a way that, because when you first read it, you can kind of take it in the way that now you're bending your will to someone else in order to, oh, it's okay because of this. But when you actually take those principles and apply them, it's more, it's a lot more like, when you apply those principles, you don't feel like that. You can actually feel the way it's intended, which was, it's pretty powerful, because I mean, yeah, it's interesting, because you're feeling pissed off at first anyway, or in whatever the thing is. But once you learn to start seeing things from a different perspective, then all of a sudden, you don't even,
It dissipates.
those triggers kind of dissipate till they're non-existent, and then you're like, well, that was never even a thing, or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
It helps you. It helps you just really understand. Like some people talk about, looking at themselves outside of themselves and just kind of like being an observer instead of, just internalizing everything, and try to see the third party point of view of oneself. And that's especially important because, even back to like the cognitive functions, you have extroverted functions and introverted functions. The introverted functions are very internal, but the extroverted functions are very external, right? And like take abortion. Abortion, individuals would consider is immoral, but the collective believes it's ethical. And that's why it's legal in those cases, because ethics and morals are not the same. But ethics are the collective value judgment. It's what the collective believes is a good or bad thing, or a subgroup of people, or a group of people of at least 3 or more, right? But introverted feeling morality is the personal good or bad judgments, what an individual believes is a good or bad thing, outside of external influences, right? And navigating that, these books really give you the tools to do that, to help develop your manhood in a way that makes sense, and in a way that's actually constructive instead of destructive, which, like I said, is necessary if we're going to put a stop to the fatherless generation that we keep producing over and over and over.
Yeah. So how important is men, like, in as far as men go in the development, like a support network of men that you can hold each other accountable and all that, like like in the men's group or some sort of.
It's absolutely critical. And even outside of a support group standpoint, men need to have relationships with fellow men, real men, mature masculine men. they have to have those relationships because it allows those men to be kept honest. It allows those men to hold each other accountable, and they'll do that naturally. Like I got a Discord server. We got John and some of the other guys there, and we are constantly holding each other accountable all the time. And that's anywhere from work or our businesses or our relationships with our wives or even our own children. It's every aspect of all of our relationships and who we are as men is definitely on the table and up for discussion and up for accountability at all times. And we do this to each other consistently, and this is healthy. Why is that not really prevalent in first world culture? Well, it's because women are running every aspect of childcare. Like, where are the male teachers, for example? Well, why would there be male teachers? They're not paid very much. You know what I mean? And because of that,
well, I mean,
boys,
we're the first generation to really, have a real big hand, or, maybe the second generation to even have a real big hand in raising our kids in a while. I mean, not, a long time ago, it was different. I would say even 100 years ago or 150 years ago, at least, it was a different situation. Because
you'd have apprenticeships then.
Yeah, and then that kind of went away, and now we've got this new weird sort of thing going on where, I mean, I think it's changing now but I mean, depends on the state of the father too, but we seem to be going back to the father having a bigger role in the child care anyway in the early years, because I mean, you go back and that's it. It's just the wife stays home and raises kids.
Yeah, definitely. Throughout the 1900s and in a lot of cases, the latter half of the 1800s, that was very typical. But apprenticeships, for example, all were required through the first half of the 1800s and all of the 1700s and whatnot, because you had to learn a trade. You had to learn a skill. Nowadays, it's pick your poison. What do you want to be when you grow up? And you have the thing where the child is told they can be anything they want instead of focusing on meeting their own needs. Oh, and by the way, at the same time, they're seeking the approval of women because they've been raised by women. They've been raised by women. Like, they have more exposure to women in a 24-hour day period than they do to men, especially their fathers. So what are they supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Do you find that males are connecting on a superficial level more than we should? I mean, I feel like before like I learned about all this, I was connecting over sports and partying and real just like, I mean, in some ways we had pretty strong relationships, me and some of the guys over.
How many of them still lasted into your sober years?
There's a few, yeah.
Because I had a ton of those too, but I'd probably go and think of like two that, hung around once you quit doing all that shit.
Yeah. But I mean, it's different. Like when you're playing sports at a fairly competitive level, there is a real deep sort of camaraderie.
Oh,
like
yeah,
you got your back kind of stuff. But I don't think it reaches the level of what we're talking about. Like I think that to take that to a personal self-development level is a completely different thing.
The goal of this is to get to the point, like, you got to think about what you were comfortable talking about your hockey buddies with.
Yeah. And
I mean, you want to create a space where you can go in there and say shit that you don't want to say to fucking anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the meaning of that group is, to go there and, talk in a lot of ways, talk to them about shit that otherwise you're not going to fucking talk to anyone else about it because you're too embarrassed about it or you're too whatever about it.
Yeah.
But then you've kind of got that spot.
Loyal to you. Confidentiality goes a long way, and we have that expectation on our Discord with all the men that are there, and we do have some women present, but those women never interfere with the fact that it's a very masculine area for the men to grow and share things. And like I said, we'll talk about anything, but there's always this air of confidentiality, this air of accountability, and we'll even zing each other pretty hard. In some cases, we'll take it personally here and there with some of the banter that we have, but that doesn't mean anything in the end, because at the end, we all know that we have each other's back, that we are committed to each other and committed to each other's businesses, committed to each other's success, and we have a culture of honor as a result. That's something that most men don't even have, and they have a really hard time getting those male role models that they need to be able to develop the mature masculine. Because, like I said, the magician archetype is men who have got it raising up other men. There's so few magicians out there.
Right. And
because of that, they don't have that shaman experience that they need to get out of their boyhood and get into the manhood, because no one's shown them. I
So
mean,
they
their
got to
father sure
band
as hell is not
together and
going
get
to.
it on their own.
Exactly. I mean, predominantly, I had to get it on my own because your father is either absent or he's also a man child and inept, and that's predominantly the same narrative that we see day after day in society. If we're going to put a stop to the fatherlessness, we have to restore maturity to the men. And I don't care about patriarchy, and I sure as hell don't care about feminism. It's not about that. It's about restoring the mature masculine and creating sovereign men of personal sovereignty, because those men are the ones that will drive culture. Do you think those men are going to put up with the fact that our currency is being inflated to nothing, where we have to work harder and get less, less food on our table? That's not going to happen. I mean, think about it. Would people be able to repeat what happened in 1776 to create the United States nowadays? No, because there are no men. If you create real men and you return the mature masculine to a generation, it will literally change culture. It will change the world overnight, actually. And it will be a serious contender if all of a sudden all of the sheep are being rapidly converted into wolves overnight.
Create abundance, really, because everybody will
Absolutely.
need to,
Generative.
Yeah.
Everyone's generative at that point.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I mean, interesting look in the mirror is problems of society, And I mean, in a lot of ways, it really aligns with what Peterson's saying too. I mean, his number one message in his new book, regardless of what a bunch of people who haven't read it have to say about it, is to fucking get your shit together, quit bitching about everybody else in the world and how unfair it is, and go fucking clean your room. Everything, every bit of it. And that's, metaphysical and all that, inside, outside. Clean your room and make sure your house is in order before you start criticizing other people or wanting to change the fundamental structure of society.
Order determines outcome. If you want a good outcome, you better get everything in order ahead of time. The problem is people just don't know what the order is.
Well, I mean,
and that's what I'm trying to do.
How come the studio is such a fucking mess still?
Oh, this is like the furthest outreach of my room. I haven't even got out of my fucking head yet. So it could take a while to get all the way out to the studio.
You're still cleaning the head?
Have you seen the house? It seemed like the house got dirtier when I started cleaning out the head.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I can see it. I can see just after, reading a couple books and connecting with some people and getting some shit off my chest that's probably been on there for fucking 20 years. It's
huge
profoundly fucking
life-changing.
Life-changing, improving.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's not like I fucking changed everything or anything like that. It's just a matter of, taking an hour a day, even an hour a day and committing it to that for now is better than anything. But I mean, in the last fucking 6 weeks, I turned on my TV once and watched 2 episodes of Arrested Development. And it's just like, I got too much to do right now to be bogged down in TV and everything else. And it's like, it feels good. It feels, I don't know, like, to be honest, right now, I don't see a reason to turn on my TV because I've got too much to do. It's like cleaning. I'm busy cleaning my fucking room. There's no time for television. And at the same time, I'm trying to find that group, that group to kind of spin it all together. And that's the sort of thing I'm trying to I can see my sort of, I don't know what to call it. Maybe not my purpose, but something that I can see kind of the next stage of the community we've created is encouraging, because our community is overwhelmingly male.
The summer of self-reflection.
Well, that's a different thing.
Oh.
But that got put in the main chat. It was never supposed to get in there. But that was supposed to be a private Discord. But I mean, I'm encouraging, because you can only fit so many people in a group. So you got to encourage other people to fucking get in your own group, man. Talk to some buddies, find some buddies that or if you, with the internet, it can be anyone, right? Find some people you resonate with, and maybe it's only 1 or 2 people for now. And, grab a book. Start with No More Mr. Nice Guy, and you got to do the activities, though. You can't just read the fucking book and So you got to do those fucking activities, and you got to want to do it, and you got to mean to do it. You can't just be like, okay, I read the books, so now what? You've got to fucking read the books and want it. If you don't want to do it, if you don't want to change, if you're just doing it to, do it, then you're not going to get anything out of it. You're just going to bring down the group.
I think this podcast has helped a lot, though, for us over the last 5 years. Like being able to, express ourselves in an authentic way, like in an honest way, and not being really judged. And
the way I look at the podcast is because we started it out as just, like a gag, not a gag, but as a
gag.
Not a gag. A gag's the wrong word, but we didn't start it out to be this. We didn't start it out to have all these listeners, and we never pictured this.
No.
So it's not like we didn't go into it with a shtick.
Well, we might have pictured it. I mean, we might have hoped.
Yeah, but we didn't have a shtick.
Yeah.
We didn't have it like, okay, it's going to be this, this, and this. So we were able to do it very authentically, I think.
Yeah.
And then when you can start to get accepted for that authenticity, I think that can start
That's
that. All of a sudden you start to feel comfortable, a little more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And then, that can do it too.
Yeah. And then people sharing their stories.
But there's still a bunch of stuff
listeners.
I'd never mention on the fucking podcast. So
Like what?
don't go fuck yourself. Bus driver.
I
Let's clean out your closet first. Bus driving
I've
Graham.
been cleaning mine out for a decade.
I know.
dude.
I'm just getting started. So your trigger was probably
Just getting sober.
that started all.
Part of it.
AA?
Well, that was part. I mean, the 12 steps was part of it, but the treatment center I went to, and then learning all this other stuff, like just being into the spiritual stuff and self-development and the way of the superior man and all. But I mean, we had those groups. Like I was in a men's group in an AA group that was like 60 fucking solid dudes that were helping each other through sobriety. Like that was powerful shit. Getting up in front of those guys and having to talk about your story and your shit and get it out. Like it was pretty powerful. So that kind of stuff is very similar. And then but I was into some spiritual stuff before that. Like I think that helped me get into sobriety. Like looking at sort of like law of attraction and like Eckhart Tolle type stuff. Like I was reaching for that stuff. And then that's when everything sort of switched over.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. Yeah.
See, the way I looked at it, the interesting thing about it is all I really, I mean, and obviously it's not just that's all you do, because it's kind of it's a mindset. So you're always doing it or trying to. But I mean, honestly, I just took the time that I was putting into my fucking social media.
Yeah.
And fucking put that into fucking focusing on that every day. Because, I figure if you take that time that you're spending on social media and fucking around watching TV every day, and maybe you're not, but those were my things that
but it's just hard to know because social media is a part of the podcast, so you think you're working in a way for the podcast, and then it kind of takes
there's a
you
line.
down.
There's a line for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I deleted my Facebook and things like that. That's another one, and that's kind of what the Peterson that all started with the Peterson book, because that was kind of like he gets you to start adding up your time that you're wasting in a day.
Really?
And he doesn't tell you what wasted time is. He's like, you decide on your own what's wasted time and what's not. And so I tallied up, and he's like, pay yourself $50 an hour. And it fucking adds up quick. And you're like, holy fuck. And if you just take a fraction of that time and I was like, if you take a fraction of that time and apply it to making yourself a better person, might as well give it a whirl.
Yeah.
So that got me into talking to Chase and reading a couple books, and the whole sort of train got.
Yeah, right on.
I bought
I
bought the self-authoring program too. I'm only about just getting started on that. That's pretty fucking.
That's good. I'm happy.
Pretty crazy shit too. Yeah. See what happens.
Yeah, part of the thing in
fucking
the
train wreck, bro.
Part of the thing in the step work or whatever
Just
as well,
disappear.
and refuge recovery even is they you got to do. I mean, if you're gonna follow some of the program, you got to do your own inventory, right? Like you look at your suffering and what caused your suffering, and looking at your defects of character and all that. So that sort of helped try and clean house as well, just acknowledging that and then having to say it to another person.
That's right. The podcast is all a part of that, though, for sure, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Crazy to think about.
Yeah. Wow. So do you want to touch on, I don't even know how much time has gone by or how much time we have left, but
An hour 15.
so do you want to talk, I mean, you mentioned some interesting stuff in your own life and your own goals and all that. Do we want to transition into that, do you think, or do you want to keep going on to what you do? Do you want to
Sure.
talk, we should talk a little bit about, like, you know, Darren's already mentioned how much you've helped and this stuff, and that's fascinating for me to see, and I'm super fucking happy for you guys, Darren and his group. Support group. Do you want to talk? Is there more stuff you want to talk about what you do for people and the coaching and aspect and all that before we transition into some of this interesting stuff you're talking about, your future plans?
Yeah, sure. I think I just want to talk about my motivation and why I do it, and it really comes from the fact I got married. I got married when I was 19 years old. I was a total man child, and she lost all respect for me pretty quick. But I was like super religious, and we kept this marriage on for going for so long. And then all of a sudden, children started coming around, and it just turned into a really big shit show. And in as much as I used to blame her for a lot of the things, and I even learned the psychology. I learned my cutting edge, psychology stuff specifically to save my marriage, right? Well, I still failed. I still failed at it because I was a man child. And I know that men out there continue to have this experience. And yes, I do coach women too, but I really spend a lot of time focusing on men because I'm tired of the fatherless generation, because I think the fatherless generation is the problem. If we could just turn the hearts of children to their fathers and turn the hearts of fathers to their children, society will change for the better, and we'll have men of personal sovereignty. And then we won't have the political bullshit or even the health bullshit or glyphosate and atrazine in our food, for example, all this bad crap in our society happening because men won't take it. Because men have self-respect and they have mutual respect for each other, and they would basically rise up and make changes on their own.
Well, they wouldn't be doing it, in the first place. There's a bunch of people that are absolutely complicit in it.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll get on their soapbox, and
in
if that doesn't work,
a paycheck.
Those men will get on their soapbox and talk about it. If that doesn't work, well, then they'll go to the ballot box. Well, if that doesn't work, they'll go to the judicial box. Well, if that doesn't work, then they'll go to the ammo box.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whatever it takes, because men of personal sovereignty will take care of business, and they won't be like these little bitches, because they realize it's better to be hated and respected than it is to be loved and treated like a little bitch.
Yeah.
And that's literally how society is structured right now. It's creating little bitches everywhere and making people live like cattle, literal cattle. Yeah. And I'm sick of it. And because I was cattle, my woman at that point in time did not treat with any respect. And quite honestly, I agree with her. I completely agree with her. I completely agree with the fact that she would have nothing to do with me because I was a horrible loser and a horrible example to my son. You know what I mean? And yeah, our relationship can't be salvaged anymore. But you know what? It's my fault. After years of putting it on her, I have to be the one to take responsibility for my actions.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
So,
and I have.
How did you come to the conclusion about the bigger picture and the fathers and stuff? Like how did that process happen for you?
Well, it really came down to me just looking at society as a whole and realizing just how screwed up it was, and realizing that there was no way that I was the only person that had this experience. And I started talking to a whole bunch of my peers and starting to read a bunch of books and listen to a podcast and various media, try to understand specifically what the root cause of the problem was, why society was so bad. Why do I have these physical ailments? Why is there, why is GMOs a bad thing, for example? All of these different aspects of life that permeates everything in our very toxic, inflammatory society, and that's even mentally toxic and mentally inflammatory because all the stress that we live under at all times. Mm-hmm. Where does this come from? And the thing I kept on going back to was the fact that everyone is ignorant and everyone is immature. And I realized that the reason what caused all of my problems was my lack of maturity. And it's like, well, hold on, I had this discussion with myself when I was 27 years old, about to turn 28. I was like literally on the cusp of turning 28, and I was in Vegas when this happened. And I just had this conversation with myself, and it's like, well, what happened? Like, why is it this way? And then all of a sudden, like a big epiphany, and I realized it's because I am the most immature human being I've ever met. And because of that, I wasn't going to do it anymore, and I was in a strip club when I had this epiphany.
Wow.
And but the epiphany happened as soon as I touched some amazing Asian titties, just to be honest. And all of a sudden I could feel at that moment, while holding this woman's titties, I could feel at that moment all of my self-respect literally returning to me after not having it for decades. And it was the most amazing experience. And I immediately went home and told my wife about it to her face, and then told her, say, like, great, you can either divorce my ass right now, or you're going to agree to allow me to see other people. I just laid down the law. I was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. She got mad at me, and whatnot. But then a few days later, she actually came up to me and said, you know what? I thought a lot about what you said, and I think it'd be okay if you saw other people. And then that's basically, I began the process of regaining my manhood after that. And having this experience has been important to me to show other people, other men, you don't have to be man children anymore. Where you're at is not where you have to stay. What you have is not all that you can have. You're the head and not the tail. Order determines outcome. If you want a good outcome, you need to get your life in order. Faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. I learned those concepts from a mentor that I had years ago. His name's Ken Hubbard. He's a good dude. And that helped propel me on this path of manhood and develop King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and which I'm still working on constantly on a daily basis. And really leveraging that magician, because no one ever leveraged that magician for me. No one did. So I am trying to bring up fellow men into the mature masculine rapidly, because I know that if I do this, I will change culture overnight. Because let me tell you something. Here's my other motivating factor. I have a 3-year-old daughter. She is extremely precious to me. The last thing I want is that when she comes of age, that she is a man child there for her. That's not going to go well with me. Yeah. I need to have a man that I respect. He could be a young man, but as long as I respect him, that's all I care about. And then I'll be like, oh, thank God, someone I respect is with my daughter. And then I won't freak out and be afraid anymore. So I have to keep producing men as much as possible so that there's a chance that she won't end up with a man child when she comes of age. And not only will I respect her when she comes of age, but beyond that, she'll respect me.
Yeah. Wow. All from a Platinum Club experience. Nice.
Was it the Platinum Club?
No, just kidding. I don't know.
No, it was Treasures.
Yeah,
Treasures. I've never been to Vegas.
Oh, really?
No.
Don't go.
I probably will.
So.
I went to Seaside, I had some beers.
Yeah.
It's only 3 or 4, but enough.
Yeah. I was proud of you for not getting out of control.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
I've seen you in that state.
The first paradigm, I got pretty wrecked up.
So, but this isn't your ultimate goal.
It is my ultimate. My ultimate goal is to change fatherlessness, but I've been and to change culture and bring back personal sovereignty to men. That is my number one most important goal. Absolutely. Right. It's just how I'm getting there is different. Okay. I could teach this personal philosophy from a man stuff, but I also talk about the Jungian analytical psychology. Why? Well, it's because this personal philosophy stuff and men and whatnot, that's really human nurture, but I need to help people understand their nature and who they actually are. You got to find yourself, you got to know who you are. You got to know everyone, because you have to have understanding. The whole hidden meaning behind the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay, so I'm an ENTP, right? 3% of the population are ENTPs, super rare type, right? People just don't know how to deal with me. And because of that, I'm demonized, derided, treated like crap, because I make up a very low minority among the type sphere of the total human consciousness, right? So based on that, if I want people to be okay, if people are going to treat me well as an ENTP and respect me as an ENTP, well, that means it's my responsibility to learn everyone else's types and treat them as such. And instead of judging them to my standard, I'm judging them to their standard. for their type and who they are and what they are capable of.
Right.
Because no one ever did that for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I try to do this for people so that they realize who they are, and then after that they can start developing self-respect. Life rule number 1: above all else, respect thyself. And that is the most important standard by which I live my life. Self-respect is everything. And how can I have self-respect if I don't even know who I am? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where I start. I start off with that, and it's like, oh, you're one of these 16 archetypes, and you have these 4 personalities inside your head, and here's how you interact with yourself, but here's how you interact with people around you. And we start typing the people around you, and they're like, oh wow, yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense why my dad's so upset at me for not wanting to work on the car with him in the garage when all I want to do is play video games instead, or those types of things. When you have mechanically inclined children versus non-mechanically inclined children, for example, or other types of people who society automatically assumes is ADD or ADHD, or they're autistic, when that has nothing to do with it. That's just their psychology. That's their personality type. But society thinks they're ADD and ADHD, or they're autistic, and then puts them on pills or something.
Oh, that's gotta drive you nuts.
Like, oh yeah, through the roof. I go to 11 like John does.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, there's a ton of that these days, and medication is just unreal.
So what about so how are you going to handle, how is the path different then in the future for you to get this? So
all right. So what I'm going to be doing is that, yes, right now I offer coaching to people. I teach my philosophy about manhood, and I get people infographics so they can learn along. I produce a lot of video content right now with my YouTube channel, and do the newsletter. And I will be I'm authoring a few books right now, 2 books, and I hope to have both of them published next year. That's nice, but that's not the ultimate goal. Not remotely. The ultimate goal with this is to, like, for example, imagine social media that is completely aware of this form of Jungian analytical psychology that has algorithms that can help people understand each other and help people parent their children, help people be in intimate relationships, help people work well with each other, and match certain jobs with certain types of people. Match certain people for intimate relationships. Provide strategies, even specific schools that have different cultures that would be ideal for certain kinds of children and not for other kinds of children. All of this information will be provided to the end user at all times, while simultaneously on the back end, we're taking all of that data from all the users, and we're actually able to start mapping out human nurture. We have human nature mapped out with the Jungian analytical psychology already, but then we're actually going to be able to see how people's types are interacting with daily life. And that includes their purchasing decisions. That includes how they communicate, even over text chat, what subjects that they like looking at, what types of posts they like looking at, just to see, okay, well, these types are more interested in this type of content. These types are more interested in that type of content. And it will really start to be able to solve burning questions that we've had ever since the beginning of Jung creating this science. One example, does it matter? So for example, my children, my son, he's an INFJ, but his father's an ENTP, that's me, and his mother's an ESFP, right? Is there a hidden algorithm where I could actually calculate based on the parents, of one generation or maybe 3 generations back, and average them together and create a weighted average to actually predict the type of the child that will be produced through a genetic standpoint? I'll be able to answer that question with this kind of data, and prove whether or not it really is just like handedness. Because right now the psychological community thinks that your type manifests in your head because of your handedness, just like your handedness. Like, I'm left-handed, some people are right-handed, and you just don't know, right? It just kind of happens, and people's types just kind of that way. Well, with all this data, we're going to be able to figure it out. The problem is there's risks. It's insanely risky to have this proprietary data out there just for anyone to use. Because then if we are able to predict people's types ahead of time, certain types could be labeled undesirable, and then we have mental eugenics on our hands. There's also the risk of transhumanism, artificial intelligence. People could take these algorithms behind these technologies and finish artificial intelligence, because with this, you could actually program feelings into a machine, because logic is innately attached to ethics, and you can actually, using algebra, you can actually calculate ethics based on logic, or with rationale, because it's based on multi-streaming logic. You can algorithmically actually program morals into a machine, right? You can actually code in feelings, and you can make AI more human as a result of these algorithms. So it's not without risk. There's huge risks to deploying the system and deploying these algorithms and putting out there on social media and gathering all of this data. But the way I see it is, yes, that's super dangerous. And yes, that could cause a lot of problems for our future collectively. But from my point of view, it's inevitable. So it's better that I'm the one who's driving that bus driver, you know, than somebody else, because it's inevitable. I can't stop it from happening. So it's best that I'm in that driver's seat instead of somebody else being in that driver's seat, because I can defend the intellectual property. I can move the intellectual property forward and have a vision, and the vision that it should go. I mean, look at nuclear physics. I mean, the idea was to find free, unlimited, low-cost energy for everybody, and instead we created atom bombs. You know what I mean? Like, any technology out there could be weaponized or caused or turned in or twisted in such a way where it could be used for evil, and as much as it could be used for good. So it's like, well, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Try to protect it and protect the future. And by getting involved with it, that's how I can protect it. Because if I don't get involved with it, somebody else is going to, if they're not already, and then we're screwed.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds fascinating.
Sounds like fun. I'm off Twitter. We gotta get off Twitter now. We're gonna get profiles.
Would you have to test everybody? Would everybody go through tests to see where they're at? Like, how'd you figure out what I was, or how did people figure out what they are?
Well, you can take tests. That's what the MBTI is. It's a test, and it's like 150 questions. Linda Behrens and Plato. If you put both of their,
Uh-oh. Hang on a sec. We lost you there.
Mike went out there. That's my fault.
Okay.
So Plato and Behrens, you can put their work together and create a type grid. If you go to csjoseph.life, like right now, and like put in your email on the very front page, you can download a PDF of this type grid, and it's how you could type people. And it's basically like times tables. It's a 16 slot 4x4, 4x4 grid. And all you have to do is identify a person's temperament and their interaction style, and you can instantly know what type they are. And you can actually create an algorithm that scans Facebook, for example, and all the posts based on certain keywords. And you can actually identify people's types like instantly, like that. And then you instantly know how they make their decisions. You instantly know how they gather data. You know where their insecurities are and where their fears are. You know where their worries are. You know where they're critical. You know their biggest weaknesses. You know all this information about these people like that. And then you can then start a manipulation campaign on that person with third parties. And, like, it can be used for insane evil. Or you can also use it to sell them certain things, because you can engage their personality and convince them very easy, to sell certain products to these people, either through ads or actually paying somebody to use Facebook Messenger or on Twitter to do a direct message to this person. Hey, have you thought of this? Engaging their cognitive functions in a positive way in order to increase the chances of a sale, right? And it's all manipulation. This can be done at that level. You know what I mean? That's why it's dangerous, and it's coming, if not already here.
Wow. So is one of the reasons why Darren and I are we have chemistry is because we're both in that one column, like idealist, people focused.
Yeah, idealist. Yeah, you're both idealists, intuitive feelers. All about bringing that ideal world. Darren, because he's a dreamer, he dreams up the vision of the ideal, but you as the mentor, you teach others the ideal, you execute the ideal. You are the driver, the bus driver, the driver of the ideal. You're the one who brings it into reality. So Darren provides the vision, gives you the vision, and you execute the vision. That's basically how your guys' relationship works in that regard when it comes to idealism and finding what the ideal is. Because Darren will be like, well, I'm feeling I was thinking about this, and and you're like, yeah, that's good. Okay, awesome. I want to do that. And then there you go. And then it's executed. And then, oh, great, this ideal thing has been in there. And Darren's like, well, awesome. Now I get to have this cool thing that I was thinking about. And it's no longer in my dreamland. It's actually real now. Thank you, Graham. That's dope. That's kind of how your guys' dynamic works in that regard. And not only that, it's not just with your relationship together, but you could bring that ideal to others as well.
Yeah. Right on.
And awesome.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. So everybody head to that website and download that.
Type yourself out.
And then how do they contact you for coaching? Just through the contact on the website there?
Yeah. You could do just click the coaching link, and then you can put in your information, sign the coaching agreement, and then we do like a 1 hour session over Skype. I like to do a Skype video session, and it's usually in front of me in front of a whiteboard. And the coaching can be like anything from, I don't know what type I am, please help me, or I need help in gaining manhood, or I'm this type and my husband is this type, please help, or my son is going into 9th grade. He got out of middle school. Now he's going into high school. What do I do? What can I do for him? I'm concerned that he's going to have failure to launch syndrome. I need to get him back on track. What can you do for me? There's tons. The sky is the limit with the content. And from a type standpoint, I'm able to basically figure out what their issue is, and we could troubleshoot it. And then I create a solution for them. I mean, even with couples, I do a lot of couples counseling. I'll give the couple, like I have one tomorrow night, for example, but I'll give the couple like a list of rules that they have to follow. Each person has their own rules, like Jeff's rules on loving Susan, right? And then Susan rules on loving Jeff. And I'll give them their sets of rules, and they'll even share them with each other, and that's fine. But they'll realize that there's something different than before. And then I've done this with couples where I've done like one person, give them the rules and not really, and they never even told their spouse that they were doing them. And then naturally they could see that their spouse is already behaving differently as a result of following those rules, and their relationship is so much better. I remember one guy who hadn't had sex with his wife in probably 5 months. And the following day he did just 3 of the rules, and he got laid that night. And he's, dude, he called me. He's like, holy smokes, what are you smoking? Can I get some more?
That's awesome.
Nice.
That was pretty funny.
There you have it.
Yeah, right on.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, Chase.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great. I love you guys and what you're doing and your community. It's fantastic. And thank you for the opportunity of being here and talking and sharing. And just help me save or change the fatherless generation into a fathered generation, and keep that going. That's all I ask, gentlemen. We're just got to change the future and bring personal sovereignty back.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And when you get those books, like we should have you back on. Actually, we should do this again. It was a lot of fun, and maybe we can just even dig a little bit deeper into Darren's
Grabs.
work. Yeah. and we'll talk about your books and stuff when you come on. And let's do it again.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. I'll let you gentlemen know when that happens.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks, Chase.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was our chat with Chase.
That was fantastic.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, that was really good. I think he's onto something there.
He very well could be.
Yeah.
Very well could be.
Kind of makes me want to get involved in that. You know?
There you go. Slugger. Mentorgram. Better get working on them
You think he
calves.
was pretty right on our dynamic and stuff? You think?
Some of it for sure.
Yeah, some of it, yeah.
Some of it seems backwards.
Yeah, some of it does seem backwards, but maybe that's the nature nurture thing, or like what Brody was saying about the inherent skill versus the learned behavior and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. I highly recommend checking out his YouTube channel. Check out his podcast.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Graham can put it all in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it on the show notes. Yeah.
Fuck, it's hot in here, eh?
Yeah.
Hungry too.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Check out the Spark page, guys. Grimerica.ca/support. Help us keep having these nice, beautiful, long, uninterrupted chats. And I replaced the audio hub so that the audio fucking gremlins stop fucking with us.
Yeah.
We need to smudge this motherfucker.
Oh, that's a good idea. I'll bring in some exercise salt as well. I got some of that and some oil.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right on. All right, guys. Big thanks to Chase for coming on the show. And I think that's about it. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.